Snapchat. Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario on stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's Ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursue.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio, once again with your host, Nick Burnaby, here on UCY.tv. Make sure you guys check out our website, theantimedia.org, for the latest and greatest independent breaking news. I'm also joined here by my co-host, DB Schwartz. How are you doing tonight, man?
Doing well. Just starting to, man, the MH17 thing is just getting insane. Like, all these things now, they're correlating with the missing plane, and then there's dead bodies with diseases, and there's biotechnological weapons being put into blood bags, and all kinds of crazy shit I've been reading.
Yeah, man, and unfortunately, being the fact that this area and this whole conflict is so politicized and propagandized, chances are we're never going to really find out what the hell happened over there. You know, unfortunately, and all we're going to hear is either Russian propaganda or Western propaganda. That's about it. You know, at least that's what it seems to me.
Yeah, I mean, all the indications are that it was probably the Ukrainians trying to shoot down maybe Putin. I mean, I don't know. Or there's also this other whole theory that this stuff was loaded with biotechnology weapons that were going to go start a new pandemic in Asia, and they were a weapon. They were a covert weapon, and I guess people within our own apparatus and Russia came together and said this thing needs to go down at all costs. It cannot be allowed to land in Malaysia. I've been reading a lot of crazy stuff. So it's obvious this is huge. It's obvious it's being used as a pretext for war, because probably why? Because it didn't start a war, because it didn't land.
Yeah, exactly. There's a few developments here besides this whole plane controversy. Now, quietly, the White House has authorized some security, quote-unquote, consultants from the Pentagon, which basically probably means CIA or whatever, are heading over to Ukraine now. So guess what? We got boots on the ground. We got consultants out there that are going to instruct these guys on how to put down this rebellion, which is horrible because this Ukrainian government is only a few months old. It came to power through a rebellion, and now we supported that rebellion. Now we're helping them put down the other rebellion that's still going on in the East, because the people in the East aren't being represented.
I actually believe that the Ukrainian government, as it sits, was placed in as a complete puppet act, and it was a coup d'etat, man. And that the Russians didn't want this to happen in their sphere of influence. This is the whole thing. If we had countries, say like Cuba, from back in the 60s, and we had the missile crisis, exact same thing. When something's within ballistic missile range and you could never shoot it down because it's so close, you cannot allow that to be in the enemy hands.
Yeah, definitely. Russia has, I don't want to say more dogs in the race, but a much larger dog in this race. And you know, they have a lot more to lose. And Ukraine is right on their doorstep. We talked about that in the last show. It's right there, and Russia's always had a big sphere of influence there in Ukraine. And for it to fall into the hands of what appears to be a banking, you know, a banking imperialism, because if you look at the guy that swept into power, Yats, he was handpicked by our own State Department before the uprising ever took place. And of course, who is he? He's a former central banker.
Yep. He's another one of these guys that's going to come in and do a Grecian Goldman Sachs buyout and privatize all the infrastructure on Western Ukraine, and then they're going to say, well, what's the difference between this and communism? You know, there is none. Crony capitalism is the exact same thing. Instead of forcing you with a gun, they force you, well, with what? Taxes, and you can't get away from them. So it's like we said before, the Ukrainian people are going to be the one that lose out no matter what happens.
So yeah, I mean, there's so many neo-Nazis out there in Ukraine, man, and I think it was like something like 20% of their new government is neo-Nazis. We helped set that up. We're the ones that helped back up the this coup d'état, which is what you said basically what it was, and I pretty much agree with you on that. And you know, we gotta understand that it's our money that's being sent over there. How many billions have we sent over there so far? I mean, I know it was over 3.
2.2. You know what? It did crawl over 3 now. It was 2.2. I think when they starting to really track it, which was after the bailout, wondering why in the hell, after all this billions of dollars and how broke we are, do we keep giving Israel 2.2 billion? Well, now you're right. It is up to 3 billion a year. And we give Pakistan $2 billion a year. I mean, so if you really want to know the game we're playing, we're playing the game for keeps because the people at the top know that if everything doesn't go according to plan, they're probably going to go to jail or worse. And you know what? It's not going according to plan. And we're seeing the desperation. This is what it is. You see a false flag every week. Every week.
Yeah, man, and a lot of people are saying that this Ukrainian plane, I can't say myself, I haven't seen any real evidence. All the evidence I've seen has been all just pure speculation. Everything from the Western media outlets on TV to the Eastern, to what Russia's claiming, it's all speculation. We don't know what the hell's going on over there. So it's just really hard to say. The thing is, though, is that we have a moral obligation to stand against what the government's doing now by sending these consultants over there. We're sending experts on killing people over to Ukraine so that they can put down this rebellion. Not only one is that dangerous because it's going to kill people and it's going to cause some kind of blowback, of course. But then you have to keep in mind that now it's just more and more experience that the government is getting on suppressing rebellion. You know, and when sooner or later, when the time comes here, when people try to hold a rebellion, guess what? The government's going to be extremely good at putting them down.
Oh, yeah. They've gotten into a science. I mean, we have things like we've talked about before, which now I even found out are mounted on drones, which are brown noise and other things that are going to make these protests, well, quite frankly, pretty much impossible unless you're wearing a diaper. And that's just the beginning of it. They have Wi-Fi they can use and they can activate, and it's going to give everyone a pounding headache, and they're going to go home or get away from the area. And so tear gas and things like that are 50, 60, 70-year-old technology, and they're happy to supply Ukraine with all our old crap we don't need. But that's what it is. This is the puppet state. This is what economic hitmanism is about. It's about going in and superseding any kind of democratic process for crony capitalism, especially Fortune 500. And you can see it when Biden's son got on the board of a major gas company. It's just the cronyism is unbelievable, and these guys are all interrelated. That's the craziest part about it.
Yeah, we can't forget about Biden's son getting in as a chairman. I think it was Gazprom, right, which is one of Ukraine's biggest gas producers. So,
right.
I mean, it was a total economic imperialist move. We backed up. You know, what we basically did in Ukraine is we took a small uprising and we co-opted it and then financed them and then turned it into a pure-on coup d'etat.
Right. I mean, what they wanted more or less was a more EU sphere of influence. They weren't saying, we're now part of Europe. We're no longer Russian. Well, they were saying, we want to become Ukrainian. We want to control our own destiny. We believe the EU is going to give us the best chance at that because, well, when you look at the Ukraine, they have a varied resource base. They make a lot of food. They have oil. They have energy, coal, and they make textiles. They really are a powerhouse if it wasn't for the corruption. So would they think they'd get a better shot with the EU? Probably. I mean, they probably get a better shot with the EU, but the way that it happened was just a full coup d'etat, and you can never stand for that if you're a superpower.
Yeah. And once again, it's right on their doorstep. They're not going to stand for it.
They can't.
I mean, we're basically prodding a bear.
Well, yeah.
Literally prodding a bear. So it's just something that we shouldn't be meddling in, man. And unfortunately, our government is. And we talked about this on Monday, but it seems like they're just trying to pull out all the stops right now because it looks like they're getting extremely, extremely desperate. With all these conflicts going on all over the world, and now they're really trying to prod Russia into doing something dumb or dumber. And we talked about it on Monday, man, and I really think that it's so true, is that when these countries are willing to openly disrespect us, in the case of if this Ukrainian plane was really shot down by Russian equipment and Russian-backed rebels with the help of the Russians, it's a slap in the face to our economic powerhouse that we used to be. We're not anymore, and if these allegations prove to be true, that just goes to just set it in stone. They understand that we now have such a crap economy that's based on pure fiat, just like Europe. We no longer have any power to do a damn thing to any of these guys that are holding the resources and have a military to protect them.
Right? Exactly. And that's what it all is about. It's just about having that ability. And it's Orwellian, man. It's like the tri-super states at this point. and it's up to us. I mean, China and Russia have been stomped out. They really have no voice. I mean, Russia tries and China tries, but they already have the apparatus set up there that they're trying to do here, and then they have their way. I mean, you have a military that really can't be challenged, and they can do whatever they want. That's what we're all about. It's about stopping that. It's about achieving a balance and really going back to an era that people don't have to worry about their survival. The fact that people today starve to death at all anywhere in the world is simply a matter of no will from people. They themselves haven't suffered enough to want to let their own lifestyles go down a little bit so that everybody can have enough. I think that's what we're getting to, is that we're between a rock and a hard place now. There's so many people, and we need to share. But the people that have all the resources don't want to, and they'd rather go to war. And that's just insane.
Yeah. What we need is a pure, a restructuring of the way that we think about the money that is being spent and used and all that stuff, because right now we're being absolutely robbed. We're being robbed by the government, we're being robbed by the corporations, we're being robbed by the foreign policy, we're being robbed by the Federal Reserve, and only a very select few of people are able to benefit from this. And everyone else is basically the victim. Now, I was listening to the radio the other day, and we got this conservative guy out here in San Diego. I forget his name. It might have been that former mayor dude, Roger Hedgecock or whatever. And I don't mean to listen to it, but it was during the day. There was nothing else on. I was driving somewhere. There was traffic, whatever. Turn on the radio. And he's sitting there saying, okay, yeah, we don't need to raise the minimum wage because, if the... Basically what the guy was saying is that the minimum wage has been outpacing inflation, which is absolutely insane. Because if you look back at the minimum wage in the early 70s, and if it would have kept up to true inflation to this day, the minimum wage would be around $25 right now. Unfortunately, they changed up the way that they calculate inflation. They don't really calculate all the stuff that actually fluctuates. They only calculate the durable goods and these weird economic indicators, and they don't account for the price of gas. What was the price of gas back in the early 70s compared to now? I mean, was it like 1,000% higher or something?
Oh, at least. It's probably a quarter or maybe 50 cents. I mean.
So, combine that. I just saw a report today that showed that beef prices have just hit an all-time high.
Right.
So we are being nailed with inflation. The gas prices are never coming back down from this $4 range.
They're artificially low. They're only being kept this low because of fracking. And once people realize the trade-off, then the oil industry will be dead as we know it. Because if they double their gas prices, which really is what the market is at, about $8 a gallon, you'll see people overnight going to electric cars. It'll absolutely kill the automotive industry. That any company that doesn't have an electric viable option is dead overnight. Because we're the only one that really drives. We're the only consumer-driven car market. China's starting to pick up, but they even pay $7, $8 a gallon, sometimes $6 if they're lucky. So, and they make much less per capita. So, it's going to change everything. It's this paradigm shift that's on the horizon. Everything's going to change when you can go home and you get free power and free transportation from your solar panel grid. It just frees you up so much.
Yeah, man. I want to talk about these guys, and we got a story coming out on Live Free, Live Natural. It'll be out published tonight. It'll be out on social media tomorrow. And in case you guys didn't know, I've taken over as editor-in-chief of Live Free, Live Natural as well. So we're trying to pump out some really good science-backed articles over there to talk about improving our health via food and cool technologies and interesting stuff. Not quite as serious and combative as the anti-media is, but it's all really good info. And we talk about we like to write about food and talk about how food and inflation correlate and all that stuff, and how the price of food basically goes along with the price of gas.
Right.
But going along with what you were just talking about right now, we got these guys that we're going to be, it'll be out tonight on livefreelivenatural.com, that have made this do-it-yourself solar basically they've made their own like solar factory that you can do with a 3D printer, and you could print a solar panel on this thing every 15 seconds. Okay, now they're small, they're micro, but this is awesome technology, and we're talking about being able to get 3D. You know, we're talking about being able to print solar panels off the grid. You know, we're talking about building them at home. You don't got to worry about buying them from China or anything like that. We're talking about making this stuff at home, and this is a great technology, I think, and it's going to free up a lot of things, I think, man, it seems like, and for it to be printed out of a 3D printer is just amazing, and and it's pretty cheap, it's done really quickly. Pretty soon people will be able to sit there and print out these solar panels for like a week, and then they'll be able to cover their whole house in this stuff.
Well, that's what I was just about to say, is that you're going to have already 3D printed houses that have concrete bases. They don't have any wooden frame anymore, so they're super durable. They keep heat in and they keep cold out, and you know they're basically the best thing you can have for walls. And then when they can throw in the solar panels being the roof, like that being your actual roof, the entire square footage of it, the Earthship's going to be 3D printed. For under $50,000, all you need is a plot of land and some hookups. So it's exciting times.
Yeah, man, and so this is great news, and we've talked about it before. With an abundance of electricity, you can basically do anything, anywhere, whether it's 3D printing or making your own water, any of that stuff. You know, so make sure you guys check for that. It'll be on the Anti-Media Facebook page tomorrow morning. So keep an eye out for that. We got a great original article coming out that fully explains this thing. I'm not fully understanding of it, but our journalists are a little more in touch with this technology than I am. And now the next story here, man, and it's obviously kind of redundant, but we got a bunch of just overwhelming amount of police state activity going on now. And I know everybody hears about these stories every day, and now that we're covering, we've got a few journalists working on covering this stuff daily, and it's just overwhelming, man. I mean, there's like 2, 3, 4 different stories coming out every day, and sometimes it's just absolutely sickening.
It's getting to be to where they're not only are they brazen, but they're just in total defiance of all constitutional statutes. I believe personally that probably on the federal level they probably have already abolished the Constitution. It sure seems that they act that way. And I think that it's filtered down now to the local PD, that it's pretty much coming from higher ups, that don't worry about anything, no matter what, beat it in court, whatever. Even if you don't, the city will pay for it. And since we print money out of thin air, who cares? Who cares? Has there ever been a cop gone to jail? Has there ever been a cop even fired? Recently, in a case that they should have probably gotten the death sentences for, no. And that's the thin blue line now is becoming the black line. I hate to say it, but people are starting to look at the PD, and they have for a long time, as the enemy now. And I think it goes both ways. And how can that end well?
It can, man. It can. And you know, we got this. This one story went really big. It's been going big for like a week now. But there was this guy in New York, this big, giant black dude that apparently all he did was break up a fight.
Right.
And then the cops come up to him, they accuse him of selling cigarettes. And this goes to show you how dead serious the government is about collecting their taxes.
I mean, think about it. This guy paid for his life for breaking up a fight, and for selling cigarettes, they put him in a chokehold. When's it going to be to where people that see this, just 50 people gang up on it and make it stop? And then all citizens arrest these guys. I mean, this is why we got to disarm these guys, man. While they hold lethal power, there's going to be no accountability whatsoever, because they know they're untouchable on the streets. They got to be de-armed, man, disarmed. That worked in the UK. If they're going to try to pull any gun control on the population, the police state has to have its teeth pulled out.
Yeah, exactly, man. Because even if, let's say that 10 people jumped in and tried to fight those
cops
off, exactly, they would just turn around and it would turn into a damn massacre.
Right. So we need to have ex-military be SWAT. That's it. None of these guys coming up through the ranks. They need to be professionally trained. And then these pretty much, I hate to say it, but these bottom barrel, lower than low guys that pretty much fall through the cracks to these jobs, they can have pepper spray. They're pretty much about as good as a mall cop, most of them anyway.
I mean, maybe a deployable taser or something, just in case. But definitely, I agree with you. The cops should not be lethally armed. They definitely should not be lethally armed because they've
SWAT
just proven. Yeah, maybe SWAT can, but these cops have just proven to be totally belligerent, and they've killed more people. Cops have killed more people than the amount of soldiers that have died in the whole Iraq War.
Right.
I mean, that's telling, man. Over 5,000 people were killed in the last decade by cops.
It worked out to something like, wasn't it 1.5 a day? So every day somebody dies at the hands of a police officer. Every single day. Sometimes 2. I mean, this is where we're at. And it's normalized, but it's getting to a boiling point. There's people I talk to that, on a daily basis, I've seen them go from, well, you shouldn't do anything stupid, to now they're like, man, if a cop pulls you over, you could go. It's a possibility, and that's just insane.
Now we got these cops that are trying to fight back online. Now they're trying to get on social media because now they've gotten such a bad rap. Now, I'm one of the admins on the Cop Block Facebook page, and when I joined with that page, we were at like 35,000 fans, and now we're up to like 800,000, and it's only been like a year. Okay, so this tells you the public sentiment is turning against these cops. So now these cops are trying to make preemptive moves, and they're trying to control their PR on social media, because on social media is where they can't control the narrative. And now we had these cops come and comment on one of our articles that Cassius wrote on the anti-media. And basically he goes and he just basically tries to say that everything that we were saying was wrong. And then he goes, if you want to see some real unbiased coverage, check out this local news story. They really covered it right. You know, and it's like, well, now it's starting to become obvious. These guys have the local news stations in their back pocket. And the local news basically wipes their asses for them and lets them basically get away with killing anybody. And then if there's a statement that's going to be made on the tragedy, guess who makes a statement? The police. They make a statement on their own tragedy, on their own killing. So of course there's not going to be any transparency, and of course it's going to be a one-sided coverage. So now this isn't the first time. I've been looking, and more of these police departments are starting to respond on Facebook. And almost every time they post these news stories from these local mainstream corporate news sources, because it's becoming plainly obvious now that these guys are completely in bed together. Now, it's going so far now, okay? We're talking about moving up into the national media, and like we said, the story about that big guy that got killed by the cops in that chokehold, he basically suffocated to death because he had asthma, and they laid down on top of him and all that stuff. I mean, a guy that big, his own body weight can do harm too. The cops should have known better. Obviously, they weren't trained well enough. But not only do we have these local media, corporate media organizations covering and wiping the asses for these cops, Bill O'Reilly, the quote-unquote most popular news program and primetime news program in the world or whatever, came out the other day, 2-3 days ago, and did a hit piece specifically at Cop Block, this organization that I help with on social media. And he came out, and they just totally tried to make Cop Block look bad, make them look like criminals, make them look like terrorists. They brought up one of the founders' criminal record. They stereotyped one of the guys they interviewed from Cop Block down in Texas. The guy, just because he had a beard, they said he looked like a biker, and they inferred, basically were making the reference that bikers are bad people, dangerous people. I mean, Megyn Kelly referred to him as Paul Bunyan or something like that. I mean, we're talking about this outrageous, audacious news coverage directed at social independent media and independent journalism, because let's face it, cop blocking, videotaping the cops, that is journalism. That is raw form journalism. And we got Bill O'Reilly, who's supposed to be a journalist. coming out and basically saying that he was thinking that it shouldn't even be legal. So we got a journalist journalism is supposed to be all about the First Amendment, freedom of speech. We got a quote-unquote journalist coming out and trying to bash the First Amendment. This is absolute insanity, man. But it goes to show how effective we're becoming. It's so much so that not only the local media have to get hijacked by the police establishment. Now the global national media is now cooperating with the police narrative and trying to roll back this anti-police sentiment that's rightfully rising in this country. But I don't think that just to me to see Bill O'Reilly go on and talk about it, that just goes to show that they're losing the fight, because we've talked about this many times before. Who watches Bill O'Reilly? Well, guess what? The median age of people that watch Bill O'Reilly are 72 damn years old. So guess what? Nothing's going to change. Only the young people that saw it. We were Justin King countered the claims made by Bill O'Reilly, and we posted that yesterday or 2 days ago, and that went absolutely viral, man. We're talking about 35,000 shares, thousands and thousands of likes, hundreds of thousands of views. So, we're making big, huge strides here when it comes to holding these police accountable, and now they're trying to co-opt the dinosaur media, which doesn't matter. It's too late. You want to speak? You want to talk to old people about police brutality? Have at it.
Go for it.
You want to talk about the people that are actually going to be out there on the streets videotaping these cops? Then you're going to have to go online.
And they can't even co-opt the younger people now. Like, forever they've said Reddit's been co-opted, blah, 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 everything. How are you going to co-op a forum? And it's going to be obvious when voices are not genuine. And when people are pretty much paid trolls. They're getting called out by young people now. I'm talking 13, 14, 15. Now get that there are not only internet trolls, but they're easy to spot. Easy. If anytime they go against the grain of society, which is basically an agreement about most stuff, we don't need to go to war. 1 out of 10 people wanted to go to war against Russia. Who are they? Let them be drafted. 1 out of 10 people wants GMOs. Let them eat only GMOs. We're in a position now where we can use our voice. The young people don't need to vote anymore. We make it so uncomfortable for the older generations. They feel so in the dark, and that alone is going to change public opinion. I myself have done it with my own older people in my family. So the time is coming. The tide's been rising forever, and it's now at this point where the only thing they can do is silly stuff like World War III. That's all they got left. The tide's already turned.
Exactly, man. And
keeping the pressure on.
Yeah, and we've talked about it before, how our mission here is time sensitive. We need to really get a grasp back on, every country needs to get a grasp on its political process, because almost every country in the world definitely has some kind of beef with its political process, because most political processes, since almost all of them are based on quote-unquote democracy or representative government, or some like China and stuff are outright fascism, but China still calls itself a republic. Every country, I think, has the same problem, where the people aren't being represented correctly. And social media is giving people a voice for the first time, like ever, basically, where we can really organize online and really get stuff trending and really make the effort to get stuff out. We did an article, I did an article with another one of our journalists for Live Free, Live Natural on Saturday night. And it was about the McDonald's fries, how they don't decompose.
Right.
And guess what? By Monday, guess how many shares that article had? 440,000 shares. Okay? So one article that we don't have to really pay anything to get pushed out, just based on organic reach through our Facebook pages and stuff, and the people that just want to read it and the people that share it, that stuff gets out for free. Now, how much do you think that article cost McDonald's in PR? $1 million? Maybe more? I mean,
maybe less.
Yeah, man. So these guys got to spend a shit ton of money to get their message out. The corporate media has to spend a shit ton of money to keep their operation going. They have to get corporate advertisers, which are a lot of time big pharma and all kinds of other crap. And we don't have to pay anything to get our message out, because we're bringing a message that actually resonates with people. We're not bringing a message where we have to force it down your throats by paying for the coverage. we're bringing a message that people want to hear, and so it gets a life of its own, and it spreads organically. That article about Bill O'Reilly spread to, I don't know, 100,000, 200,000 people, and it's still going. And we got a ton of comments. I can't tell you how many people I saw commenting that were like, "Man, I used to watch Bill O'Reilly, but after this, I'm never going to watch him again."
Right.
I mean, there were so many people that were saying that, and there were guys like, "Yeah, I kind of didn't like Bill O'Reilly before, but I still watched it. But after this, I'm never watching him again. He's horrible." You know, because we were able to point out this blatant propaganda.
And they're all that way. You can look at Maddow, you can look at Cooper, you can look at any of them. There's not really anybody that's on a major news network that isn't a corporate employee. And they're very well paid, and their pay is tied to stock options so that they're paid to lie, and it behooves them to continue with the facade. And you have to remember that a vast majority of the people that are the talking head types don't even have journalism degrees. They're usually just connected in some way. And a lot of the times they're not so covert CIA assets. So it's just ridiculous. We have a Department of Propaganda just like every other country in the world, but ours tries so hard to pretend it's not what it is. And it's just ridiculous, and really it's demeaning to the people in our society that have figured this out and now are waking everybody up. Because that's all they got. That's all they have is the media. Once the media dilemma is solved, there's no more foreign policy nor domestic they can ever push through with any amount of these fake events they keep making happen. People just are not going to budge anymore, and we're going to find out who's done these things soon. It's just inevitable.
All we need are more whistleblowers to come forward, man. You know, and I think as the society grows and starts to accept real freedom of speech, I mean, look at the hero's welcome that Snowden received from everybody, except for those in the corporate media that tried to frame him up as some kind of traitor. But if you look at anybody in the independent media or social media, everybody was on Snowden's side. Everyone. I would like to say anyone under 40 is basically on Snowden's side. And half the people over that are on his side, you know, because this is the kind of stuff we need to find out. Everybody's been speculating, oh, yeah, the government's spying on everybody ever since 9/11. No, everyone was like, oh, that's just a conspiracy, you know. But then Snowden comes out and then it just validates what everyone had been saying.
Of course. And it makes it so patently obvious that it's not about national security. Because metadata that's impossible to crunch and that is instead used for quantum algorithms to try to predict the future, that is pre-crime. That's all that can be used for. That is for political dissidents. That is to make people go away. That is to blackmail. It's for all the most malicious things you can possibly imagine. The breakdown of all privacy and thus identity. These are things that are groundbreaking, and they'll change our whole realities way before we have a chance to even hit transhumanism. And they're all for the worse. We don't need a camera everywhere. We need it maybe in places where there's crimes. Go patrol areas where there's crimes. Get out of everybody's house. You're wasting everyone's money, and you're making us much less safe, especially if we ever do have some kind of dictatorship situation in America where all of these files that are never going to be erased and are kept on everybody could be used for any nefarious purpose possible.
Well, let's just hope that the IRS is in charge of the files and maybe it'll get blown up off their hard drive. You never know, man. We could always be hopeful. But, yeah, exactly right. The NSA is not in any way protecting our freedom, yours and my freedom. It may be protecting the extremely, extremely elite of the people that need it for blackmailing and need it for, you know, this, that, and the other thing. But it's not helping us. Now, add into this militarization of the police force combined with the NSA. Everybody's worried, everybody's concerned, nobody likes the NSA, nobody likes the MRAPs, nobody likes the militarized police force, and it's very, very concerning, man, and for it basically invalidates anything that Obama or anything that the government says, because they can't talk about anybody else, they can't say anything about another country, because they no longer have any kind of moral authority, because guess what? They're doing all that bad stuff back to us. They're militarizing the police force. They've thrown a record number of people in jail, more than any other country in history, over half drug crimes.
And how many of those are marijuana is what I really want to know. let's just really, I want to pinpoint, if half of all of the people in jail are in for drugs, what percentage of that is for a plant that can't be patented, thus why it was made illegal, that's now legal in 2 states and being sold? I mean, it just delegitimizes the entire DEA structure, which makes half of its revenue based off of marijuana. So once that becomes legal, the DEA is gone. There's an alphabet agency that's gone. There's way less power for these super elites, like you've said, and that's the only reason it keeps being perpetuated.
Yeah, you know, and this whole NSA thing, the whole spying on us, it's being rejected by anybody that's not glued to the TV tube, because if you saw there was only one TV interview, which was conducted, I think, by ABC, if I remember correctly, and the whole time they were just, every single time they were just asking Snowden all this snarky stuff, tough questions, this, that, and the other.
And they edited 4 hours into one, too.
Yeah, and they edited it way down, and it just goes to show you how smart and you know, able to speak Snowden is. For him to not slip in 4 hours at all, I mean, God, the guy must be a genius.
Well,
and,
what they didn't show, too, Nick, was that he pretty much alluded to the fact that if you're a personality, if you're a celebrity, if you're anybody of importance, they already have a blackmail file on you with subdirectories of sex tapes, nudie pics, any text that could allude to drug use, drug buys, drug sales, all categorized, all waiting to go. That's what it's about. That's all it's about. This is how you can keep pushing an agenda through Hollywood, because everyone there's blackmailed. You can keep pushing an agenda through Wall Street because everyone's blackmailed, and Washington, D.C. And basically, let's face it, everywhere in the world now. And that's why BRICS, which we should really talk about, Nick, because BRICS is about to bring the hammer down. BRICS is absorbing not only Germany, but France and Argentina as well. Have you heard about this?
No, I haven't yet.
So we have the entire world pretty much, if Argentina is doing this, that means Latin America is going to follow, and we're going to be on an island, and it's isolation time. So if people are ready for that, if they're so blindly patriotic towards this country, then you'll be stuck in it. Like we've always said, if the UN's in charge of the border right now, are they going to let people out? Not. This is going to become the biggest prison camp probably ever, very soon.
Arguably, we already are. We've already got the largest prison population.
Right, but BRICS will be the final hammer.
And so, what is it that BRICS is doing? I know I read that they're basically building they basically just got done setting up a new kind of a new kind of bank, like basically kind of like the IMF, but
exactly
run by Brazil, Russia, India, and China.
And South
Africa, and a few other people that are going to sign on. And as this thing gets bigger, more and more people are going to sign on, just like they did with the UN.
Right. So when France and Germany do that, and they'll still stay in NATO, but now they'll not be in the EU, now they'll be in BRICS, how's all this going to work? I mean, why are we being put on an island? Are we being offered up as the sacrificial lamb like Germany was in World War II? Is this the time frame now? These things are all starting to come together, these pieces, and people need to be prepared for a complete collapse of the dollar. You need to have gold and silver. Gold and silver are going to quadruple, like we've been saying forever, Nick. And honestly, if you can get out of a big city, you need to start thinking about it, because it'll be pandemonium. I know, especially where we are, man, we'll probably have to get out of here if it gets crazy, but if BRICS is really going to have what it's happen to make a new internet, and they're making a new Panama Canal. Have you heard of that too? That Nicaragua is now being carved up.
I heard a rumor of that, but I hadn't heard much else on it.
I mean, it got stalled for a while, but this Russian or Chinese billionaire, he greased enough wheels, and it's going through now. So, I mean, it's very, very foreboding, all these telltale economic signs, because, yeah, we are still the biggest, most powerful military. And if we go into a big enough slump over a recession, they've done twice in the past where they've started a war to get out of it.
Yeah, and, I mean, it seems like the writing is on the wall, man. I mean, I haven't seen Russian tensions this low. We haven't seen it this low since the Cold War ended. And I was only very young when that happened, but still, it's not a good situation considering that Russia is still the one power left in the world that still has the military technology and infrastructure. Yeah, and if they make an axis with China, then they got the manpower as well, and that's just not something that that's not something that the world that's going to help the world is a rivalry between these two super states.
It could be really paraphrased quite simply as China's got the people, Russia's got the resources, and we have the know-how, but what happens if the other two decide not to play ball with us anymore? How worthwhile is our technology with no manpower to manufacture it, and then no resources to power it?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly what's happening, man. Is China and Russia are rejecting our way of thinking, and we actually had an op-ed in the Anti-Media the other day from William, which will probably be doing some more writing for us, but he basically summed it up pretty well, man. And it was basically it's not that these guys are ever going to beat each other. It's that they have two completely different ideas of what they want the world to be and what they consider power. And obviously these rich, the ruling class, they love power and they like to absorb power. And the more power they have, the better. But what if the theory on power is different between these two superstates, which means that it's a war that never gets won. It's just a eternal war, man. And and when you think about it that way, it becomes more Orwellian, where they just have this constant perpetual war on purpose, just to make sure that there were no extra resources for anybody in the working class to get free time to try to do anything major and try to make any changes. And it's definitely, I think, a tactic, and I think it's been laid out before by political philosophers and stuff. But it's just it's ancient
asymmetrical warfare against what could potentially be a revolting population, revolting public. And what they're really super worried about are, well, the rural white population kind of, with their massive amount of arms, essentially carving out maybe a southern fiefdom or all kinds of crazy Civil War plans they've made and have in place. And, it's all just completely pulling the strings, and it's BS. We're organically going to become what we are. We're already very, very... we're a melting pot, man. We really are at this point. Everybody's kind of intermingling for a long time, and racism's dying out naturally. And this divide and conquer stuff's not going to work much longer. Maybe one more generation. That's why they're trying to stoke the fires now as hard as they can.
Well, today I was thinking, and I was kind of realizing that, if you look in nature, and in my study of evolution, most times in nature, when there would be like a separate species or a subspecies that would sprout off from another, would be because of a geographical location, right? And now the perfect example is Darwin's example over on the Galapagos Islands. There were 3 different islands, and all 3 islands it was basically the same turtle, but they were all slightly different in a way. And that is basically what races are. That's what makes people look a certain way. Because back in the day, back before we had all this communication and all this ability to travel, everyone was separated by geographical, locations, and therefore each location had a certain trait. Certain traits would develop stronger than others, and therefore it made kind of different races of human beings, right? But now, in this modern time, now that we have travel and communication, and where if I wanted to, I can go to China to meet up with my girlfriend that I met online. I'm not saying that I did. I'm just saying, for example, I could. And therefore, I think that race in the earth is probably going, if we don't split back into this kind of geographical, highly nationalistic type of world, basically, where we're made up by all these different countries, the human race they're all going to be interrace, right? They're all going to be mixed race in 50 to 100 years, and it'll all
take a long time. I mean, we're talking about maybe 1,000 years, because at first there's going to, of course, be people are just going to be naturally drawn towards particular types of people for whatever reasons. It's not going to be everybody all of a sudden is going to start intermingling with everybody overnight. But we're getting to the point where, you know, we're going to have that, you know, multi-racial future where everybody's kind of just completely a mutt. I mean, it's going to get to that point. That's not a bad thing. And it'll destroy nationalism, which has been useful when there was scarcity of resources, because I guess we had to just fight it out, but now we don't. So now it's just not useful anymore.
Well, it'll destroy racism, man. Because
Sure.
When we get to this point, whether it's in 100 years or a couple hundred years, of where you can't distinguish anyone from their race, then guess what? You can't be racist anymore. But
Yeah,
then we're going to have other problems such as classism and all that
Classism.
stuff that has to be
Right.
it has to be addressed.
Well, that'll go the way that'll go extinct with the extinction of racism, because at that point we'll be post scarcity. It'll be out in the open. The energy's free, and people will be completely free. They'll be free to do whatever they want. No stereotypes on society. No worrying about losing a job or somebody not liking what you're doing anymore. You're going to be self-sufficient, self-governing. As long as you don't do anything crazy, you'll be all right. We'll get to that point, you know, and that's not too far away.
Yeah. Hopefully soon, because otherwise this thing in the Middle East is going to just boil over and turn into something rotten. Now we got a few minutes left. I mean, we have to talk about what's going on in Israel and Palestine.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we can start with 777 passed away, which is huge, and 4,500 injured, which probably will push the fatality number higher. And it's a full incursion, and it's like we said the last show, Nick, that they're not going to stop this time. The stage was set for them to wipe them out, man. And ISIS is probably in their pocket, so they're not going to do anything. They're the only real force that might be able to go in there and possibly do something, but no country, no government in their right mind would ever go against nuclear-armed Israel. So it's going to be a cleansing. Now, how can we prevent that? We have to just keep spreading these horrible images, because they're awful. These videos are awful, where snipers are just taking people out, looking through the rubble for survivors. They're totally not militants whatsoever. I think right now that Netanyahu's policy was that if you're a male that's of military age, or a potential male of military age, you're a target. I think that was his whole justification for the boys playing soccer. And that the sick, insane policy is going to be used, because if they don't, they're just going to continually keep having these terrorists fire missiles at them, so they're just going to have to kill all the guys. Just kill everybody. So it's really going to get really out of control, and I just don't know how we can stop it. I'm hoping maybe we'll cut their funding or something. I don't know. Maybe we can get the government to do that.
We just need a big enough of an outcry, man.
Yeah, cut their funding. If they don't get out of Gaza, cut the funding. We demand it.
What we got to do is just start defunding it as citizens, bro, and figure out which taxes go where and how and whatever, and start figuring out ways to get around those things, man. And then we're talking about a type of tax civil disobedience, tax resistance to war. And that's not uncommon in history, bro. You look back, and there's been plenty of tax resistors that were against the wars. Nowadays, it's not as common, but probably because they don't want it to be very common, because it's probably one of the most effective ways to put a stop to these types of things.
Yeah.
So we need massive public opinion, and we need to defund these things, whether we are able to get the government to commit to defunding it, or whether we just start defunding the government.
And give Palestine its own state, for God's sake, so that they can establish their own intelligence services and pretty much nullify Hamas. That's why this is a sham. If they had a state, if they had an actual budget and maybe some assistance from us, and could hire and train guys with our assistance in intelligence services, they would nullify and pretty much probably wipe out Hamas within probably the first year of their state. So to say that Hamas, blah, 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 because they're allowed to, you allow it to happen. You don't give them a legitimate little piece of land. Just give them Gaza. Jesus. It's not even that big.
I know, man, and it's just over this little bit of dirt on the ground,
Well,
and the stuff that's built on it. You know? And they're all just buildings made by men. I mean, it's not So I mean, for this to go on this long, and it's been what 50 years or more.
Yeah.
For it to go on this long and to have this horrible situation, and even see, here's the thing: at times when they're not fighting, which is pretty rare,
Yeah.
they're under either way they're under a full embargo, basically.
Yeah.
And so they're not getting the medical supplies, they're not getting the food, they're not getting clean water and all that stuff. Of course they're going to, if that happens to any population, you're going to radicalize them, bro, and you're going to get a bunch of people that are pissed off because they're tired of it happening. And it's not happening from any of their own doing. They're just being embargoed. So of course you're going to create just that simple fact creates the environment for an organization like Hamas to even exist.
And you can't do this. You can't make another Warsaw Ghetto for these people. You can't put them through whatever the horrible atrocities that the Jews suffered from the Nazis, man. It can't be done over again and just rationalized. You can't do it. You have to come up with a two-state solution. I don't think they're asking for all that much. I think in even the current boundaries, they may be okay with it, even though it is super crammed in there. But if they had their own way to kick out Hamas or neutralize them and try to become peaceful. Now, if you gave them their own state and then they continue to do this stuff, then there's all the justification in the world to do what you're doing. But when you make it such a den of snakes and it's so unstable in there and make it the people so desperate, do you really think that people can fight back against these guys? They're taking over hospitals and launching missiles from there. There's no police force in Gaza. So who's going to stop Hamas? You know what I mean? There's nobody to. So it's just scapegoatism at its finest.
Yeah, and me and my buddy Alex went down to, I think I talked about this last week, to this protest that Netanyahu, or to this event that Netanyahu was supposed to be at. Me and my buddy went to go picket. And Netanyahu didn't end up showing up, but a lot of the people walking by, which were Jewish people that were attending the conference, were actually stopping and saying that they agree with us. They also believe in a two-state solution type of thing, or they understand that something's got to be done to stop the Israeli government from doing these things to Palestine, man. And think of it, man. Just by lifting the embargoes and the sanctions, you would probably undermine Hamas. Probably you'd be able to wipe them out, dude, in a couple years.
Yeah.
They would lose all of their power base. They would lose all of their propaganda base.
Yep.
If people in Palestine started having a good an economic upturn and more access to goods and more access to necessities, then guess what? They wouldn't feel the need to be trying to fight, and they would be much happier. So if there was a two-state solution, all the embargoes were lifted, I mean, I think we would see peace over there, bro. But it just knowing that, and knowing that this has been going on for 50 years, I don't think that definitely the U.S. government doesn't want peace over there, bro.
No.
In one way or another, and I'm still trying to wrap around this, dude, because it's just so horrible. One way or another, we're benefiting from keeping the whole area destabilized.
Well, here's my thoughts, my final thoughts, Nick, and I like that you bring this up. If there were ever a caliphate that was powerful, then the oil would stop coming to our shores. So they have to keep the instability. In fact, Iran is now getting a little too powerful for their liking. And that's why they're a target, besides the fact they won't take the central bank. So there you go. Instability keeps the oil flowing, because if not, they'd be a political enemy and they'd shut down the flow and they'd be strong enough to resist us. And that's it.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, I believe the public opinion is turning, and I think the government is going to at least back, at least try to pull the Israelis back a little bit. But it doesn't really matter, dude. The damage has already been done. I mean, they killed so many people, blown up so many buildings, killed so many families and stuff. I don't really see how a generation of Palestinians can really forgive that.
It's the point of no return. That's why I'm saying they can't stop now, and that's why I'm saying it's going to make it so much worse.
All right, man. So all we can do is just try to pull out of this thing and de-escalate it. Keep an eye on Ukraine. Remember, we got consultants, quote-unquote consultants, going into Ukraine, man. So, I mean, who knows what that's going to do. See you guys next week.
Yo, here we go.
On Friday.
Through the stereo.